And here we are. It is Friday, August 30th. I'm here with Dr. Eleanor. We've already been having a good old chat. We don't usually get to chat beforehand much, but I enjoyed that.
Covered a lot of ground.
We did, yeah, we got lots to talk about today. To start, as we always do, what's new with you? And I know there's a few things, so.
Well, let me preface it by saying I ran into a major computer problem this morning.
Mhm.
And so we're on my laptop with a new version of the program. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. But my 5-day experience was phenomenal. People were really excited.
Mhm.
And I started teaching 2 classes, one on the 4 worlds and one to human design practitioners. Both of them, we've done 1 week, and the feedback's been really good. So I'm excited. It's when I teach the way I'm planning to teach, it's just fun for everyone
Mhm.
because I can't follow a script or a hard curriculum. And I like to go where my students need me. I come out of the University of Chicago, and the department I was in there were 25 people in my class only. And the whole department was maybe 100 people. Uh, and the faculty believed that if the student had a problem, it was their fault. And so I've internalized that. And none of my students should have a problem. They're there to learn and they're there to expand and grow. And that doesn't include only the mental world, because I'm a teacher for the whole person. I'm not a teacher for the mind. God help me if I tried to affect the mind. All I can do is be present with someone with where they want to be for themselves. And usually that's spiritual. So, in my view, my classes are a spiritual adventure that is opening my students to the reality that the spiritual world is the unifying integrated field of consciousness, and that the pain in everybody's life is that we're not living in a world that puts spirit first.
Mhm.
And what that means is behavior becomes more important than how something affects a person. And that's a wrong priority, in my view. So I'm excited to be teaching and to be expanding my work. I think the human design practitioner section is an army of researchers.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to go deeper, know more, open another door. And with 4 worlds and 8 charts in 8 time frames, there's a lot of research potential
Mhm.
that can decode how the unconscious operates, how we actually navigate in our lives. Uh, I came to my desk this morning prepared to look at charts and to do some writing. And no sooner did I open my computer, it literally crashed. And crashed to the point that I could not restart it. So if I look back retrospectively at my day, I shifted gears from being totally inside my own process to calling my son and saying, my computer has a really bad problem. And I have charts on it that I need for today. And I have materials I need for today. Help. And of course, he came right over and spent 2 hours. And during that time, I took care of other things. I moved from the space I expected to be to a completely different in the world, navigate the mental world and deal with the problem that has to be dealt with in order to function. Now, I'm sure all of us have problems like that regularly.
Mhm.
And the question is, how gracefully do you deal with them?
Mhm.
And how rattled do you get? So Charles and I considered the possibilities. We set up an appointment with the Apple Store for tomorrow. We made sure my laptop was functional, and Charles sent me the charts from his new program. I said, Charles, don't you have the capacity to print out the charts I need? And he said, oh, yeah, I guess I do.
Mhm.
So we're going to be working with charts that nobody's ever seen before today,
Cool.
which
Yeah,
is,
we'll save that for later. That's a bit of a treat for sure.
uh,
Well, go ahead.
and the other thing that maybe people would want to put on their calendar is I'm going to be doing a book launch event on September 26th in my regular webinar.
Good.
And I'll be giving some things away, and we'll be looking at my new book,
And that's
which if
the
you
channels.
already have.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is I haven't actually looked at it in probably a week, but every time I do, it's pretty interesting. I'm building a collection of new habits. So, yeah, I just want to ask about the two courses. So it's only been one session with each. One is aimed at HD human design practitioners like myself who are coming in and kind of getting deconditioned from human design. With the other group, did you find for the first week you were teaching the same material because it's
Completely
like
different.
completely different? Yeah. So where did you
Well,
sit with the other group?
what happened in the human design practitioner class is that people started referring to the designs. So whereas I was expecting to teach 4 worlds one week and human design skills the next week, I think I'm going to switch the human design practitioner class and figure an hour of each week, because there's no way we're going to avoid looking at charts
Mhm.
and then talking about the 4 worlds in relationship to charts.
Mhm.
And the clinical skills that go along with that are part of, as practitioners, the practitioners ideally would be aware of, so that the use of language and the way things are framed are empowering in terms of the vulnerabilities of each world.
Mhm.
And also, if any coaching is involved, knowing which language skill to use for which world,
Right.
which, you know, I'm willing to share, even though it took me 50 years to assimilate it.
Well, that's what we're all here for, is the goods. So,
But the 4 worlds class was completely different, because many of those people have a little bit of design, but not much.
mhm.
And so I spent much more time talking about why the worlds are important, what the characteristics are of each world, and why and how maneuvering between them can become a more internalized process,
Mhm.
which is really what we want it to be. We want it to be seamless.
Mhm.
Um, and what I'm bringing to the world is the language that we all know exists: mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. And interestingly enough, I pulled out a book called The Wisdom of Tarot, because I felt like, in talking about the human design mandala, which is a synthesis of the four worlds and of the tree of life, chakras, astrology, I Ching, and now developmental psych. If we're talking about a system that's a synthesis, we need to know how to read each of the components of that synthesis. We can't leave one dimension out of it. We couldn't read a human design chart. Well, we could without astrology, but we couldn't calculate it without astrology. So if we're not able to calculate a human design chart without astrology, how can we leave the astrology interpretation out of the human design reading? And yet, most human design people don't even know the astrology signs, let alone their characteristics, their rulerships, the energy they bring to the chart. A sun in Aries is a very different sun than a sun in Pisces. Aries' ruling planet is Mars. Mars is, think about it, Mars is Martian. It's combat, it's fighting, it's sudden, it's cutting, it's sharp, and it rules Aries. Pisces is ruled by Neptune. Neptune is like watery, cloudy, imagination, openness, vulnerability, watery. You're working with a fire sign and a water sign. Fire is one world, water is another world. The energies are completely different. Now, you can look at the hexagrams, but most people, even human design people, don't know anything about reading a hexagram, except that it has lines. And then they're reading the meaning of the lines that Ra gave those lines, not the meaning of the lines if you go to the I Ching and read that line.
Right.
So what I do in design when I read a chart is I look at the key words of the pattern, the cross in the wheel. When we're born, we use a time 3 months before birth, and then birth. And I use a time 3 months after birth, because developmentally, that's real. You know, a baby is still a neonate and not developed until 3 months of age. And we know certain characteristics that come in over that 3-month period that are very critical developmentally. For example, at about 6 weeks of age, if a baby isn't smiling, we worry. If at 3 months of age, a baby hasn't shown a preference for one toy over another toy and reached for it, we worry. And at 3 months of age, when a baby decides it wants this, not that, it's making a choice. So the case for there being no choice in design does not fly scientifically. We do have choice. We have choice every single day, every single hour. You know, if I pick up my drink and take a drink, I've made a choice. It's not completely unconscious.
Yeah.
And in order to execute the choice, I would have to move in the real world. So beginning to look at the worlds with a slightly different intonation of energy. The mental world is the world we're functioning, the world when I'm talking to you, I'm bridging worlds because I'm not even thinking. The words are coming. I know I'm talking about something. And then I don't think, oh, should I say this word or that word? It flows through as a stream of energy with all that's been said is my intention. And if in the next moment you asked me a question completely off topic, I would make a choice as to whether or not to veer off the course I was on and go with what you want, or say to you, I'm going to stay with what I'm talking about. We'll get to that later. So we make choices in the mental world based on what? Where does it come from? When I was in India, I took a group called Intensive Enlightenment. We went up to a room that was basically a slab of concrete with a roof open on the sides. And we sat on cushions and we sat opposite someone. And every 5 minutes, we switched who was the asker and who was the talker. And the only one question, tell me who you are. And we did that for 17 hours a day in 20-minute blocks, 20 minutes on with one person, shift, move to the next person, 20 minutes on with that person. We would do it for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours nonstop. And then we would have a short break, maybe a 20-minute break. And that went on. And then we had to sleep there on mats. And we couldn't leave. The food was brought in. And the only break, I believe, and I'd have to check, was going to an active meditation every morning in silence. Other than the tell me who you are for 5 minutes, for 20 minutes. And then, so it was a 10-minute, tell me who you are with the one person asking that. And then you shifted and you did it again for 3 days. And other than that, we were in silence. So at the end of 3 days, what I remember is of having a direct experience of who I really am. In a memory, I remembered being her. And as I did, I got so sick, I started throwing up.
Really?
Yep. I mean, it was like a cleansing from the soul and a remembrance of who I was, who I am. And it was not a cognitive knowing. It was a physical knowing, a energy knowing, a re-experiencing of that energy before input. And I was about 2. And I was re-embodied in 2. It was a
Sorry,
very interesting.
age two?
What?
You mean age two? Like you,
Huh?
wow. Hmm.
I was obviously experiencing something, but what I experienced energetically was my own experience at age 2. Who I was when I was not socialized to be anything other than who I was.
Mhm.
And I say socialized because I'm still who I am. And I don't and have never been willing to give that up. But I am not always in that world's energy, because that energy, although it's always active inside of me, is not always experienced by other people because it's not compatible with the mental world in some instances, not in all instances.
Mhm.
So when I'm talking here in this podcast and I'm talking to you, I don't have a mental world filter of what I should say. It's coming from spirit,
Mhm.
and I don't have an agenda, but it's still filtering through the mental world.
Mhm. What was that process called? Like you signed up for something and experienced it. What was the name? Did you say?
Intensive enlightenment.
Intensive enlightenment. And it almost sounded like, maybe I've got this wrong, but it's almost like you had to repeat your personal elevator pitch to a new person, and you were refining and hearing yourself saying it, and also probably in the person's reflection as they are listening to you, they're giving you feedback. Like,
No,
oh,
they no feedback.
no,
It's
not even,
silence.
but wouldn't there be
Silence.
like
They
physical
could
feedback?
only ask the question.
Yeah, but not like an eyebrow raise or they're
No,
really.
nothing. Neutral.
Okay. So it's, yeah, interesting. That sounds
Um,
very.
it would be like sitting in front of a mirror
Mhm.
and saying to yourself, tell me who I am.
Which would be a valuable exercise to do
It's a
anyway.
very valuable exercise. I do it a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that. I've had a number of things suggest I should go look at myself in a mirror, and I always found it super uncomfortable. Like as soon as I lock eyes with myself, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it's just there's an uncomfortableness with that. So
That would be an extremely, extremely important exercise for you to do daily.
mhm.
Um, if you're looking at yourself and you get uncomfortable when you look at yourself, especially if you look at yourself at depth, how are you going to feel inside in truth?
Mhm.
Other people are looking at you in depth.
Mhm. Mhm. So many interesting things there. There was I just have to say this because it just comes to my mind, but there was a Saturday Night Live sketch for years, and this one guy who ended up being a politician later, whose name escapes me, but he did this bit called Stuart Smalley, and Stuart Smalley he was very a gentleman that would always talk about looking in a mirror and saying positive affirmations to himself, and it was always I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, and then it would be this whole sketch, and that has stuck with me for decades of just like that
Why
actually
don't you
a
try
good
it,
idea.
Sean?
Well, I'm gonna have to, but it's just so funny that just that fella in that sketch pops into my head all the time. So clearly that's
So when you think back to it and you put an analytic eye on it, what do you think that remained with you to tell you? What did you see in that sketch or perceive in that sketch? What do you know about that sketch?
a bunch of things. One, it was a very sweet sketch. but at the same time, sort of sarcastic and judgmental. And I found myself being like, that looks like a useful exercise, but no one, you wouldn't catch me dead doing it. Like that's my old thinking, right? Now it's like, that seems like a really good idea. So,
And in the past, when you wouldn't be caught dead doing it, what was that about?
oh, it honestly, it'd be at the time, it would have been caring what others thought or feeling judged. Like, what if I got caught doing this? What would people say? And now I don't give a shit. If it's useful, it's useful. But
So it was more how you would be seen doing it, not your experience of doing it or
mm,
what doing it was communicating to you.
100%, I wasn't putting myself or my own needs or spirit first. It was the, yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that's exactly what it was before, was not allowing it for myself and more concerned about what others might have thought had they seen me doing that.
And
And
yet the lines of the sketch were trying to convince yourself how you'd be perceived and not feeling it because you had been labeled other than those lines.
mhm, yeah, totally.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of things that stick with me are old sketches, I find. There's just and so I go back and revisit them lately, and then there's a whole new like, oh, I was supposed to pay attention at that point, and I ignored the message that was coming at the time. So yeah, I do a lot of like opening up an old movie and rewatching it, and sometimes being like, this movie's awful, but there was 90 seconds in the movie that was exactly what I needed to repeat and hear and view with a fresh set of eyes. So yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So many places to go. The one question I'm going to ask you, and it's a question loaded with something I just saw or listened to yesterday. So there's a fella, like I can't remember his name, but he was recounting the story of Ra's uh, download, and that there was another fella that was also, I think, a 1551. I can't remember the time he was talking about his profile, and this fella was also receiving the transmission, and he was somewhere about 12 miles away, and apparently was hearing the transmission, but then ran out to the beach and yelled "stop," and the transmission stopped. And as this guy tells the story, I think it was like 10 years later. So he saw a body graph and was like, I've seen that before. And he went downstairs and grabbed a book and came back up. And he had basically written out almost everything that Ra had produced except the I Ching. He didn't stay for the download long enough to get the I Ching. And I thought, wow, that's super interesting and fascinating. And then you were talking about astrology earlier, and I seem to recall that like Ra had no interest really in the astrology. I feel like I heard that. So did he, to your knowledge or what you remember or heard, did he, was the astrology at least in there, or that was very
Of
much
course, the
lacking?
astrology is there.
Yeah.
The astrology is in there because the hexagrams are determined by the actual degrees of the astrology of the planets.
Okay. So he had gotten
So,
sort of the whole download and the astrology was there.
well,
Was
the astrology, the calculation is astrological.
okay.
So, and the calculations of the hexagrams are based on the birth chart.
Mm,
So there is a precise pairing of the wheel and the hexagrams. And Ra was given that sequence. But Ra completely ignored the astrology.
right. Was it disinterest or he didn't want to put in the time to get to learn? Was it, what
Ra
do you
was
think?
not an astrologer.
Mhm.
And Ra really had no interest in human design.
In human design?
He didn't want to do it.
Yeah, that much I've heard. Yeah.
And he tried to get away from it.
Hmm.
And I don't think he loved what he was doing. He did it because he needed to make money for his family. And he was driven completely by money.
Hmm.
Um, and it was one of the issues I had with him, quite honestly. Um, one of the big fallings out I had with Zeno was over a $25 discount
Hmm.
for a client who was a very long-standing client of mine and didn't have a lot of money. And because she didn't fax a paper with the information filled out exactly the way it needed to be, they didn't want to give her a $25 discount on a reading.
Hmm.
And I argued with Zeno about it. And I said, Zeno, this person has worked with me for years. And I don't do business with people like that.
Hmm.
It's $25 on an expensive reading. I think it was $400 at reading or something like that.
Hmm.
I said, it's, and she wouldn't budge. And I said, well, if you're not going to budge on this, I'm not sending anyone for readings anymore. I don't do business like that.
Hmm.
And I didn't send anyone to Ra when he was there on that trip. And to top that off, when he did a reading on my grandson, which was supposed to be comped because we filled his schedule, he charged, and all children were charged half price. He charged my daughter full fee. And so after that, I was really done until he asked for help.
Right.
But Ra told me to get rid of all my astrology books. You don't need them. And when I asked him about the tarot, you don't need it. All you need is the body graph.
Hmm.
Well, what he did want to teach was just the body graph. It was simple. People could learn it. He was teaching it at what he told me was a fourth grade level, and give people a formula that they can use, and you make money.
Yeah.
And I don't do that.
Hmm. I want to, yeah, I want to comment on that because there's so many things there. One is because the more you and I talk and the more I sink into this, like this is for me, this is where I need to be. But I, of course, interact with lots of people in the human design space. And so one of the things that I've sort of heard a few times is, how can she say there's, eight calculations? Like, it's almost like it's been made up. But at the same time, we've just accepted that there's this, your birth date and your design date.
No, Ra gave me the calculations.
Yeah. So but I guess my point is, when especially those that have been in the human design world for a while, we've accepted there's just two calculations because that's what the apps show, that's what everything.
But you see, even in that, in 2000, Ra and I taught about the dream rave
Mhm.
and about the solar and lunar and the 64 gate matrix, the 64, the solar dream rave, the lunar dream rave, and then I got the calculation of the sleep design. But even if you just looked at those three designs, Ra and I taught the statistics of them. We taught what they were. Now, Rod didn't know what the dream rave was,
Mhm.
and I brought that information into it. Uh, and he amplified it, but and he taught it. even after we broke.
Yeah.
But people don't use it because nobody was ever taught how to use it.
Mhm.
And for example, if you look at the pure dream rave, which is REM sleep, and you only use the horizontal one, which is 15 gates, most people, 70% of the population, become projectors and reflectors or more. Now, if you're a manifesting generator and you lose the sacral center when you sleep, I know clinically that you're going to go to sleep thinking you have a solution to a problem, and you're going to wake up and think, what was I thinking?
Mhm.
And just that one piece of looking at what Ra actually worked with tell you that using only one chart is losing information that might be very critical for every human being on the planet. Just that one piece. Does your sacral center turn on or off when you're in deep sleep?
Mhm.
And in fact, as I say it, I would be very interested, and Sean, please remind me if I forget, but I will make a note.
Okay.
I want to do a data collection in my Wednesday class, and maybe even in my Tuesday class, of just keep a record, a tally of the days you remember a dream and the days you don't. And then what we can do is we can see two things in a study. And we have 30 people, so we can actually do a study.
Mhm.
We could do a study that would show if how many people in the groups have a defined sacral and how many don't in their waking design, and how many of those people shift in their sleep design.
Mhm.
And then, is there a differential between type in either design and the frequency of remembering your dream?
Mhm.
I have a hypothesis. Um, I'm going to look at some charts and see if I see a correlation. But that's a very interesting study. We could easily do it with my classes as a pilot.
Okay. Yeah.
But the point of it is that Ra had the charts. Ra said to me in this Dream Rave Triple Design Matrix book I wrote with him that let's see if it's right here. Ra said, this is Ra's words, begin working with the three designs at first by just observing differences in the designs and their gate activations for yourself and those close to you, much the same way as you looked at the basic rave design chart. As you go through dream keys, look at them in your three designs and begin to note how transits impact those designs. Now, he's talking about transits, but what I'm talking about in the calculations and the first 3 months of your life is that because during the first 3 months of your life, and at certain other times in your life, there are critical periods, times when the impact of the energy around you and the people around you so impact your psyche that when we're doing psychological work, we know that if something happened at one of those critical times, it had ramifications on you. So some of those times developmentally are things like before a certain age, you are not able to ride a two-wheeler bike.
Mhm.
You need certain muscular development and neurological development to be capable of doing that. A baby is not capable of walking until a certain age. And if at that precise moment that development is beginning to occur in a baby, some traumatic event occurred, it might impact how they walk. It might impact their sense of independence.
Mhm.
So, as a psychologist and studying developmental psychology, as I did, with a lot of work on Piaget stages, and I studied with Larry Kohlberg and people like that. I'm very sensitive to looking at how a person develops and questioning whether there was any event that impacted them in such a way that their development shifted gears. Now I know that when transits and when in the first 3 months of life, the transits impacted specific developmental critical times, we can know certain things about how that person was affected.
Mhm.
And that's important because if we're looking at the soul, it can impact how you make decisions that are right for you. It can impact how you channel information. Or in my case, because I'm a lunar generator, it impacts how I make decisions. I wait. I wait until I know without a doubt. And then I take action without thought. No
Mhm.
thought comes into it.
Mhm. So many things I can ask from that. The one thing I keep wanting to say, and it's because I know people are listening as well, is with with your work and more calculations and I always appreciate that you provide why, right? There's an explanation, and I really value that. Um, when I talk to other folks in the human design space that have been labeled as a projector, labeled as a manifester,
Mhm.
um, when I found you in your work, I was a manifesting generator before, and I'm a manifesting generator in my total integrated vehicle. So it was very easy for me to go, cool, upgrades. There's more channels, there's more awareness. What I find is when I try to talk to other folks that have been in the experiment for a while, and I suggest that like maybe you're not a projector in your total integrated vehicle, which is a whole new thing for them to hear anyways. What they seem to hear is, what do you mean I'm not a projector? That's, I've been
You can
recognized,
change,
right?
Sean, you can change the way you explain it.
Well, and I think I'm already learning how. I think, but I'm saying this because I think a lot of folks will see and hear this and be like, it's either too overwhelming, too much information, or it's, human design already hit them in the feels enough that it's like that's all I needed. And so they're not necessarily open to hearing something new because their specialness can change. What's exciting though is like it's more empowering, it's more clarity,
Yes,
it's less
if
of
a
what I'm not.
projector changes an integrated design to a manifesting generator, think about what they can accomplish.
100%, right?
I
Like
mean,
it's an upgrade.
it is an upgrade.
Right?
Yes.
So and then the other thing I wanted to say this in the class the other day, so I need to, and I'll try to do it in like 3 minutes if I can. But I feel like it's a really good example of how human design was helping me but disempowering me. So I've created a bunch of businesses. I'm definitely sort of an entrepreneurial sort and lots of interests. And at the start of COVID, um, I needed something to do because I was going crazy. My world changed. I was busy, and then I was busy in a new way, and it was stressful. And this is looking back. One is I doubled down on doing Make-A-Wish interviews, which was very bad for me at the time because I was just getting more and more other people's stuff in my world, and I didn't know how to shield myself from what was coming in. So that was a whole thing. But I also got innovative and thought, oh, this is a great time. My team is not busy. I should have laid them off from a financial standpoint, but instead I wanted to, I guess, empower them with helping me create something. So at the time, I was in a band. Bands don't really do well at bars unless you have a network, and we didn't. We were all very introverted. So we were a great band. Everyone was always like, "Oh, the best band we ever heard," da, 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 but they wouldn't come back because they didn't know we didn't exist. So I had this great idea that I would invent a new concept, and it was live band music bingo, which music bingo is a whole fun game you can play, but as a band, it's a really cool vibe. We created something really interesting, and I wanted an app for it. So we created this platform called Rockstar Bingo. And this is a long story, other than to say, at the time, I was so excited about this idea because we were helping people have fun and connect at a time when they couldn't, because we were able to do it online because it wasn't paper-based. Music bingo was always paper-based. So that was great for a while. It was actually like exactly correct for me. It was aligned with my spirit,
Mhm.
even though at the time I didn't think of myself as spiritual or anything. But it's clear at the time I was excited about it and I was motivated and but what happened over time is all the pressures of life and financial constraints were starting to come on that became a business. And it became part of I turned it into a business. Like it's actually used in 14 countries now. And like people are playing it all over the place. But it's not growing. And the reason it wasn't growing is because I made a couple of mistakes. One, I started viewing it as a business and oh, this is, this could pay my rent because I was done doing the IT thing. But also it seemed like, and I hired a fellow who I really care about, but he came from that world, came from the bar and pubs world. And so it kind of got tainted in that instead of being a game about helping people connect, it was a game that was to help people drink more booze. Even like even one of the marketing slogans was, "This is even easier than music trivia. It's more drinking, less thinking." And I look back and I'm just like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, but I did, and or at least I went along with it. And so and then I got into human design, and then I was like, I got so caught up in the whole sacral decision making, and that was really dangerous because I was making left and right turns just based on a kind of thing with a business. And what happened about 6 weeks ago, like it happens over a year, but in the last 6 weeks, like you've taught me to lean into the spiritual world, and I have, and part of that was talking about my values, like getting aligned with my values, my pillars. And I had already sort of done that exercise, and I'd gone through several iterations. But up until recently, up until yesterday, it was freedom, connection, playfulness, health, integrity, and those resonated for me. And so that was really important. Where am I going with that? Oh yes, so I realized at some point that we'd become this like machine that was about trying to make enough money so that I could pay my rent. And the easiest path was bars and pubs, except I didn't align with that at all. It didn't feel good. It didn't align with my own feelings about alcohol. I still have a drink, but I don't think it can take your spirit away for sure. So I realized that we had to reshift the game back to where it started, which was this is a platform that should allow people to connect and have a good time. And so, we're shifting the company and how it works and in innovative ways that I'm confident in a couple of months it's going to be exactly where I want it. But I wouldn't have done that had I not realized that I wasn't aligned with my own platform spiritually anymore. And if I had followed just that sacral response, I would have just sold the business or found a way and sold it for, like disrupted something that I enjoy doing, but also would have pissed it away for, like, after all the money and time I put into it, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars I put into this thing.
And
And
it's successful.
well, it's not successful in that I'm not getting paid yet, but it's close. But I wouldn't have gotten paid because it still was like not even aligned to me. I couldn't even get up to send emails. Like if I had to deal with the developer, it was like dragging, like it was like I was dragging like a boatload of concrete behind me to walk in the office to send the email because it just like there was something off. And
And
now
so what's shifted now?
I'm excited about it again. And I'm, when we think about our customers, we're not aiming for a segment where it might be easier. We're aiming for segments where we can have an impact. And so it's like I just have every confidence that's going to be fine. And I won't have just gotten rid of it right when it's could have its sort of S curve and take off. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't really connected with my values, which seem to be much more aligned with the spiritual world, but then parlays into everything. But until that foundation was laid, I was bouncing all over the place.
Mhm.
So I wanted to say that because I think that's important. And then yesterday I went for what was going to be a past life regression session, and the woman's name is Nikki, and it was fantastic. She said she bailed on the past life regression about 10 minutes in, and we just did a straight up hypnosis session because I was really responding to the questions she was asking. And we ended up revisiting those values. And I realized that I had been mentally placing weight on them. So because freedom was number one, in my mind, it was like 80% value associated with that. And that was messing up my world because, of course, I want freedom, but my mind was viewing freedom as, oh, there's attachment. Oh, I'm going to owe this person money. I'm going to owe this person a favor. And so I had to like restack it. So freedom's at the bottom. It's still so important to me and I can feel it.
And when you say freedom, what's freedom?
I mean, it's really about, I want to enjoy what I'm doing and I want to feel I'm making an impact. Um, but I was confused about freedom of being like not wanting any commitments. And like I just realized it's still
You're
there.
confusing the world.
Okay.
Um, define these terms in each world as an exercise.
Okay.
And I'm still learning how to work with the worlds in a therapeutic way. But what I just heard in when you were describing the word freedom, and when I tune into myself and I tune in listening to what you said about getting in touch with spirit as the important values, then the word freedom is an internal state of being in order for it to be spiritual. It's the freedom to choose,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the freedom to choose the energy you're in
Mm-hmm.
and to create the energy in each situation that aligns with your inner self.
Mm-hmm.
That's very different than freedom to relate to another person or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the mental world. It's interactional. You're approaching or you're moving toward or away from, and you could measure that. You could measure in the mental world if you're in someone's aura or not in someone's aura.
Mm-hmm.
So the tricky part of studying the four worlds is that there's a lot of nuance when we're using a language that's never differentiated between the worlds. And so if you're talking about spiritual values, Sean, the only measurement you have for whether that's aligned or not is your internal space.
Mm-hmm.
So any question you ask that includes a different world pulls you out of the spiritual space.
Okay.
Unless it keeps you in the spiritual space.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that, or like let that settle for a bit. The one thing I seem to realize or come to is freedom is the outcome of applying the other values, and like it's not. I was aiming for freedom, and it was affecting my decision making, and I realized that it was messing things up. And so it really was. And you had said something really important a while back, which was so again, in the human design world, I'm a sacral being. It's in the moment. That's useful for like, do I want to play softball right now? But when you're trying to make a decision around a business that has an impact on other people and has, I need to be more discerning. And I realized that just even mentally somehow putting weight to freedom in the wrong order was just gum up the works all over the place. And so, you had suggested, I need like a week. And at first I was like, I remember just being like, nope, I can't wait a week for anything. But I did. I stuck with the process, and I really just want to say thank you because that was huge. Like there are decisions that shouldn't be made with an and an because it could be like it could literally have someone ask me like, "Do you love me?" And it might be but it could be like, "Not right now, not with the way you're talking to me." That's like I need to, even if it's just almost being bold and saying, "Not right now," because that's how it feels. But of course, I love you, and so yeah, anyways. That's
See, but there again, you're talking about multiple worlds.
mhm,
The emotional reaction in that moment may be no, I'm not feeling loving.
yeah.
But if you take that emotional world, emotional reactivity, and transform it into spirituality, if on the spiritual plane, the relationship works, and then if somebody veers, they get pulled back in.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you begin to see that we live, and, it's sociologic. I remember in my first sociology class, the teacher made 4 quadrants, and he described the roles of men and women in terms of those quadrants. And they were the 4 worlds. Men were out in the waking world doing their thing, responsible for the physical security of the home.
Yeah.
So that mental, physical axis. And then the woman, the feminine energy, was responsible for the spirit and for the emotions. And the woman's job in the home was to keep the balance, to keep the wheels functioning with no tension,
Mhm.
and to find a way to always transform it. So, at the time, it was pure sociologic data. And it's interesting that when we do some statistical testing, like a chi-square, we break it into quadrants to do the analysis. So again, we're always taking certain polarities in our consciousness and using those as a measurement tool.
Mhm.
And recognizing that and knowing the timing for your own unique body clock is crucial.
Mhm. I want to do the mystery meat sack now. So let's do that.
Okay, let's do
Because
that.
we're an hour in, and I'm excited about this one. So for those watching, there's another series that I've been doing for a while called Mystery Meatsack, and effectively I find a public figure's birth info, and then I have the guest, in this case Dr. Eleanor, comment on it without knowing who the person is. And we've already done one before. I think it was Ringo Starr, and you did my dog as well. So, um, so I only gave you one hint. And the reason I did that was because I asked you to look at this body graph, but also I gave you a time period, which was leading up to the election. And so all I said was, this is not a politician. So that's the only thing you know about this person besides their birth info. And I'm just setting that expectation for those watching.
Okay.
The other thing I can do, and I think I'm gonna do it.
Wait a minute.
Yep, you do your
I'm
thing.
gonna run out of battery. Hold on.
Okay. Let me find this. Now, I'll wait till you're back, and then I'll explain what I'm gonna do. Mhm. So I just realized I didn't do my little intro video. So while you're getting set up there, I'm going to click that. Then I'm going to just repeat what I said a bit, but I also want to let the viewers know one of the things. So hang tight there.
Okay.
Play a little video because we're going to start a mystery meat sack. Here we go. Okay, here we are. We're back, and I've put a video within a video. We're going to do a mystery meat sack today. And so I'm here with Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner. I have given you the design details for an individual, a public sort of figure. And I've also given you a time frame leading up to the election. And I've only given you one hint that it's not a politician. And just because I didn't want to
Didn't
skew anybody.
in the midst of everything this morning, I didn't progress it beyond now,
Okay.
but that would be easy enough to see.
Okay. And then the other thing I'm going to let the audience know is because you and I are in a Zoom call, you don't actually see the stream right now. And so the thing is, like, you and I are in this Zoom call, but outside of this is a wrapper that others can see. Now, I think it would be fun for the people watching to already know who the person is, so that as you're talking about, so you're the only one that doesn't get to know.
Okay.
But also there might be some questions that come, so long as they're not that might that you can
They
comment.
don't reveal the person's name.
Yeah, but I'm going to reveal the person's name in here. So let me just make sure I've got it right. Okay, so and I also know that this is what Dr. Eleanor would say is you don't follow pop culture. You're not really following the news, so you might not know who this person is. I will say that you've probably heard this person's name before, but that's it. You're still probably not going to know very much about them. And so when you're talking about this, you're just reading their energy and their
Sure.
chart. So let's go for it. You've got the info in front of you. I'm going to let you rip. I'm going to be watching the chat to see if there's any questions along the way. And
Okay.
then once we get to that, yeah, let's just go.
Okay, I'm using a different computer than I usually use for charts. And I will share my screen.
And this has Charles, the latest version of your
I will
software.
tell everybody about what this is.
Okay.
And I have to find a way on a small screen like this to move things out of the way. Okay, so this is Mystery Meatsack, born August 11th, 1967 at 12:05 a.m. in Newark, New Jersey, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so my computer, as I said, broke down this morning and my usual charts were not available. My son Charles is currently writing a program for me on the Mac, and I called for his help this morning. He came over, we couldn't get my computer up and running. So I'm on my laptop and I said to him, well, Charles, you have the capacity to print my charts. Can you run this chart for me? So this chart looks a little bit different than most of the human design charts you've seen, including my multidimensional, because I asked for, and this is the first time I am reading a chart that actually has the astrology glyphs for the position of the planet alongside the hexagrams. And it was an interesting experience for me this morning. I'll just call this person Mystery.
Okay.
So Mystery, in his basic human design chart, would be seen as a split definition generator. And
Oh, sorry, now can I just interrupt you there? For those that are familiar with human design, this top left design body graph is effectively what people would be looking at if they just looked at traditional human design in the mental world, except you've added Chiron, right? And that's the
yes,
green gate coming out of the G center. Okay,
yes.
got it.
Um, and so what I looked at is it's very interesting that this person was born in Leo, has Mercury in Leo, and has Jupiter in Leo. So two activations, Jupiter and the Sun in Leo in the seventh gate. That's coming out of the self center. And he has the 31 also in Leo, Mercury. And that would make him a leader in an area related to speaking, I believe. He, given that, and this is the importance, really the importance of seeing the sign. If I just saw the sevens in Leo, I would think, am I right here? It's Jupiter and Sun in the seven, and the 31 is Mercury. And those are three fire signs that are actually defining a channel, the 731. That's pretty important. Leo tends to want to lead. It tends to want to be heard. And the 31 is certainly giving voice to that ability. So let's look at what else.
One thing I think I'll say too, I haven't said it's a he. But at this point, because you've referred to this person as he or him, that is correct. So, but I don't think the chart told you that. It's possible that I may have slipped and said him or something at one point.
No, you didn't tell me the sex.
Yeah.
And I don't know the sex. I'm just saying he because it's
Yep.
easier.
No, but I think we'll just say we can refer to this person as a he. It is
Okay,
a him.
it is
Because,
a he.
yeah.
Um, what's interesting is that the 13 in Aquarius is going to have a very interesting take on what this person is talking about. And, uh, let's look at the 4323, Taurus, Scorpio. And then the Scorpio's also in the 28, South Node. Huh. Taurus 27. Scorpio, and where's the 23, Sun?
Design sun.
Yeah, well, the 2343, Neptune in the 43 and the Earth. That's a very interesting combo. Neptune and the Earth. And then the 23 is the Sun. Okay, so you have two fixed signs, Taurus and Scorpio. Scorpio has an intensity. And so this person, my computer just told me to do an update. So this person has a quick mind, very smart, very deep in terms of the probing aspect for Jupiter's in Cancer in the 56. Which is only in the prenatal. So this person, I want to see the whole chart.
Yeah, and for those watching, can you just point to the total integrated vehicles? Because we've been sort of
Yeah, let me explain the
terminology.
charts to people.
Yeah.
And I should have done that to start with. Let me back up before oh, it's not in this one. Let me go to the other one. This is the chart without the astrology. And this is the first time I've actually had the astrology in front of me doing a reading. I have to tell you, it's a whole other perspective and one that should not be ignored. So I just.
And that mandala that's there in the middle, is that still this person, or is that just a representation of what it could be?
This colored one?
Yeah.
No, this colored one is just my mandala of synthesis.
Right.
And
Okay.
what I want to show from this is that when a baby is born, and let's just pick the 23, it goes all the way. 3 months is a quarter, another 3 months is a quarter. By the time a baby is 3 months old, the whole zodiac wheel between the sun and the earth has been imprinted into their aura. What I'm reading when I'm reading an integrated design, looking at Mystery Man when he was 3 months old, I'm going to see more channels. I'm going to see more of how his energy built into who he really is. And you can see in what Charles did here that we have the prenatal solar date and we have the postnatal solar date. So this body map is showing you the composite of the pre and the postnatal solar date. So if we were only talking about the mental world, this would be who this person is. I'm going to close my door because I hear some sound outside my room.
Cool. And for those watching, the body graph on the left that doesn't have the astrological information and imprinting timestamps is that's what it was referred to as the total integrated vehicle. So it's the combination of all four worlds.
So the first thing I do in an integrated body map is to look to see what the definition is. And this person happens to be a split definition.
Yeah.
Split definition generator. Very rare for someone to be a split definition generator. Usually 95% of the population in this kind of integrated chart is a manifesting generator. But Mystery Man does not have the throat get to a motor. So he's not a manifester. However, he will manifest if he's in the presence of someone who hooks him up. So he may be in a profession where he uses his instinctive perceptiveness to interview people, talk to people, because he has 7 out of 8 gates coming out of the self center. So this is a person who has a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight, who cares a great deal about being of service to the collective. 50-27, 44, 57, 32, 28, 38. This person has an instinct. I would think that this person right now is feeling unsettled. I don't know why I say that. If this person is a public figure, and I'm assuming he is, then what's going on in the world would be of great concern to this person. He would be feeling like the emotional climate in the world is way out of whack, that people aren't necessarily in touch with the right values and direction. And I mean, all I can see is the intelligence of this person, I'm looking at the head center to the ajna, and what you can see is in the mental world, this mental world design, I want to look at the planets. I'm moving back. You see this one, I put the astrology in. This is his astrology chart.
Okay.
3 planets in Leo, 3 planets in Virgo, 3 planets in Scorpio, with a moon in Libra, a Taurus ascendant, and the sun in Leo. So this person Oh, this changes the whole picture. 3 degrees Aquarius on the midheaven. That means when, where is it? How did I lose it? There it is. And looking at the progressed chart, which is right now. This person's doing well in his business. 3 months from now, he's going to do even better. So the election is going to be beneficial in terms of what this person does. I don't know what he does. See Pluto right on the midheaven. This person is becoming more in front of the public over the next period of time. And I think his voice, um, right now is an important time for him. Something's happening now, right now. Something, an opportunity maybe, a shift in what he's doing, maybe being more in front of the public than he's been. But staying true to some of his values. He sees this as an opportunity for a personal, clearing a personal issue. I don't know what that is either.
Oh, interesting. Clearing a personal issue.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
The third house is usually early conditioning, and the fourth house is often related to a parent and to the core of your being. He has the sun conjunct Jupiter in the fourth house. So I would think that he has a good sense about himself and that his childhood probably was not too abusive, but there's some reworking going on of early patterning, and maybe his perspective on things has changed over the last few years. I don't know. Moon is in the sixth house, and the south node is just past it, secondary progressed. The progressed sun is in that house. There's a lot of intensity around his work right now, and he feels it's very important. And he, regardless of what his choice would be, part of what's going on right now is part of his life mission, and he can't turn away from it. South node is 0 degrees of Scorpio. Progress south node coming right up to it. So it's cementing it. And progressed Pluto. This is not an easy chart.
Well, and
And this man is under a lot of pressure. And a lot of pressure because my guess is he's in front of the public. And he feels right now challenged to be transparent. there's a lot of conflict with that transparency. And what I'm looking at is the midheaven, progressed midheaven, Chiron, right on the progressed midheaven, or I should say midheaven right on Chiron. And the North Node, 6 degrees of Aries. So it's coming up toward the 12th house, but it's in 11th house, and Saturn is also in the 11th house. So there's this openness, the wanting to be in community and in the public community. And yet in the opposition to it, you have Uranus, Pluto, and Venus all in Virgo in opposition to the 11th house. And you have secondary progressed Pluto, Uranus in opposition, Mercury in opposition, and the
Sorry, my phone went.
what?
My phone just was ringing there,
Oh.
sorry.
So you have all of this stuff pulling on him and saying, be responsible, don't create issues. And then there's the conflict of his own spiritual values, which are conscious and which want to be put in front of the public and bring about change that will balance the collective in a way he knows it needs to balance. Going back to the design, where's the 59? Oh, he gets the 59.6 is Jupiter.
59.4, isn't it?
Yeah, 59.4. But I'm talking about the gates. I'm not talking about lines.
Oh, okay.
59. Where's the 6?
Oh, personality.
Oh, I see Uranus.
Uranus, yeah.
So it's Uranus in Scorpio. Huh. Opposite 59 in Virgo. Jupiter. People who think they're progressive, let's say, may be deluding themselves and may be holding their ground when they need to expand their perspective. And I think that that's one of this person's tasks, is to help people expand perspective on things that are emotionally difficult for them.
Hmm. Can I ask
Oh,
can I ask some
Chiron
questions?
is in the 25. No wonder. Yeah. Okay. What?
Yeah, well, because I don't want to even forget some of the things you're talking about once I share who this person is. But um, if this person were healthy, what kind of things would be important to them? I mean, breathing is important to all of us, and moving our bodies is important. But like, I know there are specifics that.
Meditation. This person absolutely 100% needs to meditate and be in his own space with his animals, ideally. he needs to meditate, and he needs to journal, and he needs to work out.
Okay. So, and those are things that you've told me I need to do. Now, so in a way, like, is that true for everyone? Or because
No,
I often do choose meat sacks that have similarities to me because I do pattern matching. So it makes sense to me what you're saying anyways. But what specifically, why do you say that? What in the chart is telling you those things?
um, the strong definition between the self center, the throat center, the ajna, and the crown tell me that this person um, is significantly bearing responsibility for what he says and how he says it, and the impact that he has on people is enough that you don't have the strength of this person's centers and be insignificant as a presence. And yet, the fact that this person's upper chakras are disconnected from the lower chakras means that if this person doesn't move and get some energy connection going between his body parts, he could have physical issues because the tension from the load he's carrying will take a toll on the physical body if the physical body doesn't have a way of discharging it. And ideally, he is in a relationship with someone where he becomes a manifesting generator.
Mm. So not necessarily a partner, but people around him that
Yeah.
help. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
He's a triple
and
split, right? Isn't that true? Because the heart is not connected below. So I think that would make him a triple split, correct?
no, because you
Okay.
have the 56, the 59. Well, let's say we go from the 49, 19 to the 38, 28 to the 50, 27 to the 59, 6, back again, and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I
That's one
misinterpreted.
split. And then the next split is from the 15 to 46 up through the 7, 31, 13, 33, 23, 43, 17, 62, 64, 47. That's a
Right.
split.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know why I thought because the heart still stood alone, it doesn't actually get defined through anything else. It somehow saw, yeah, so that's
It's
my
alone, but
perception.
it's not defined, so it's not part of a split.
Right.
But you're right, it is important that it is the only center that has no activation, no definition. And what that might tell us is that this person is probably able to express compassion regardless of who it is he's sitting with.
Mhm.
And you can see that in the mental world, he has the splenic center activated. So he's not picking up mental world energy empathically. He can stay separate and stay tuned in on a different level. But he is picking up spiritual and emotional energy empathically. And I would think that the cosmic energy currently as a collective is rather disturbing to him. that he's not at ease politically with what's happening. May not be a political figure, but he's not happy, especially with censorship. This is not a person who wants to be censored. This is a person who thinks it's every person's right to speak their truth and to speak it strongly. And he has goals. And the goals have to be congruent with his physical body. So if there's one weak area, I'd say he doesn't take as good a care of his physical body as he could. And I don't know how that manifests in his life. But if he has an animal or two or three, that helps him a lot. But goals should be set with a mind for this person to how it affects him physically, what hours he works, who he's around, whether or not it feels aligned to. He's sensitive to smell. He's sensitive to environment. So if this person is in an environment that isn't with the right feng shui, it has to have the right feng shui, or he's not going to be comfortable. So paying attention to feng shui is something I would tell him to do.
Interesting.
Okay. What you want to tell me who it is?
Yeah, I want to tell you who it is. There's something I wanted to say just before that, and I've lost it. But okay, so this person is Joe Rogan, which I'm sure you've heard the name before. I don't, and I think you'd almost have to be on a desert island not to have stumbled across something on YouTube. But
well, I know the name,
mhm,
and I know he does podcasts,
yeah,
but I don't know anything about him because I am very rarely on YouTube.
yeah.
And I don't have time to listen to a lot of things.
Yeah, no. So I mean, so many things that you said there, I think are very accurate based on what I know him. I obviously don't know him. I don't know if he has any pets. What I have seen of him is he's a very, very successful podcaster, but he's been successful in lots of other ways as well. He's very influential on that podcast. Like he's kind of the Oprah Winfrey of the podcast world, right? Like talking to people always, and he's really, I think the thing I had always admired most about him is he has a podcast and just talks to people that interest him. It really seems to be like, this is my interest now. And from what I understand, he goes and has his team seek the people out and they're on the show. And he just has a really casual conversation with them. From what I understand, they can go 4 or 5 hours. I don't think the public necessarily even sees the whole conversation. He asks great questions, and he's so big and sort of like he's done well for himself. Like he's definitely and he's very influential, and he is, he from what I see, he a lot of his stuff is based in integrity. Like he has on occasion said something that pissed a whole bunch of people off. He reflected on it and literally, would go on and post and say, you know what, I was wrong about that. Like I admire someone that can do that. He's always looking for he has lots of people on talking about aliens. He has lots of people talking about CIA secrets. He's one of the things that always drew me to him is he has, I think we have similar views on plant medicine and how it's something that we can grow in our yards and has been taken from us effectively as part of a larger war on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very open-minded and exploratory, and that's been an influence on me that's I think benefited me greatly.
So you see, in human design traditionally, with the crown to the ajna, the 6447, you would not think that somebody like that would be open-minded.
Mm,
But I see it differently. I see it as somebody who has a cosmic question and is hell-bent on finding the answer.
mhm,
And with his 4323, he's going to look at all angles, not just one.
yeah.
So, you know, you read what was the 64 was it's Venus in Virgo. So Virgo is very specific, right? It's an earth sign. It's the organizer, it's the taskmaster, and it's earthy. So what does that say if somebody has the 64 in Venus? Now, Venus is a planet that likes balance. It rules Libra. And he has his moon in 32 in Libra. So I said he needs goals. So now we know he needs goals that will be balancing goals, grounding goals, but also goals that will answer questions he has about who he is and about his place in the universe.
Mhm.
And I would guess if he's doing a podcast with people who interest him, then that's what he's doing,
Mhm.
answering all of his cosmic questions.
I mean, he's basically got access to big brains every day, and he gets to be curious. So it's pretty cool. The when we're talking about his physicality, he's notoriously known for being very fit. Like, he did MMA fighting. There's constantly showing him kickboxing, and he's a very powerful, physically fit man. And I assume that having figured that out and been driven enough, that's obviously empowering him now and made him resilient for the position he's in, which is, here's someone that is being, he has a podcast with people. A lot of it can be really triggering content for people because it's a different viewpoint than what's being pushed on us, the propaganda. And he,
Is he conservative?
it's interesting. Like, I think where I was going with that is people will make sound bites of what he says, and so he ends up getting like labeled with. There's so many times where he'll be labeled with a 10-second clip that's been manipulated versus the 4.5 hour conversation. So I think a lot of folks tie him to Trump because he comments on Trump, but like he seems quite balanced. He really just is like a bullshit detector and is trying to like be to provide a vehicle where the bullshit can be out and discussed. So I think I don't know his,
Well,
but I think he's
he and
fairly
Trump
balanced.
obviously are on the side of getting rid of the deep state.
Yeah.
So hold on, I have to let my dog out of the room.
Okay.
Go on. You can go. That is coming down. Go on. You can go, Sam. Arlena, Sam's coming down. Sam came down. Let Sam out.
I love doing a live cast.
I'm in a podcast. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Folks chimed in the chat, so it sounds like he has 3 dogs. So, if Joe ever sees this, I think it'd be interesting, like, and you've said that to me before, like when I meditate, having dogs nearby. And I try. They generally don't seem to want to be around me when I'm doing that, but I basically trying to wrestle the dogs in. So, but they come.
The reason I said it is because with his integrated chart. Oh, what's that? How
I
did
think
that?
it's just highlight on the page. You click away.
Um, bizarre. Um, with his integrated chart, if he has an animal, it's likely to hook him up.
Mhm.
So it would make him a single definition manifesting generator. Is he in a relationship?
I don't know. If he is, he doesn't. Well, I mean, I don't watch all of his podcasts. I just sort of observe from afar as well. But so I didn't know how many dogs he had, and I don't know if he's in a relationship. But
Any other questions from people?
not so much questions. They've just been commenting. Yeah, and then so
Can you
he's.
send me the comments?
Well, sure. I'll just read them even too. The first one was from, I think, Isaac. Oh no, the first one was from Isaac. Was never knew this meat sack is a Leo. Then he said, that's like me, Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter in Leo, and add Venus for me. Nikki Williams said, I have 3 nieces who are triple split generators. So exciting to study these points in class. Oh, so it's a student. Noga said she's nailing it. And then he has at least 2 dogs, 3 in fact, came from the world. Oh, and married 2 daughters. So there you go. I actually, so that, I don't even know a ton about him. It's just more observing and seeing that, like, as we enter this election season, I think people are worn out from listening to the news. There's nothing to believe there. It's just so, this is an independent voice. And I think these voices online, there's more and more of them. And he's probably one of the not the I don't want to say the loudest, but certainly very influential due to the longevity, the quality of his guests. I mean, like some of the people he has on there, like they're just fascinating conversations to listen to. Um, so yeah. So I don't necessarily have any more questions. We're closing in on 2 hours here. So we do an energy
Let me just mention that the charts I'm using here, which are the 8 I usually use, and then the program also gives composites. So you can see, for example, prenatal, postnatal lunar dates, which is pretty interesting. So this is lunar, and you could see if in sleeping, if we turned it on its side, which gates are there. There's the 50, and there's the 1, and there's the 62. So he has in the lunar level, he has certain gates that connect with animals. And in this program, you can get all the composites. And I'll stop sharing the screen. It's a program that Charles is writing, and it should be available for subscription as a beta version in the next month.
Cool.
At the latest. It's currently, I mean, obviously he printed out the charts for me so I could use them. And it's just a question of making sure that it's okay to release certain parts. He said something about licensing. So he needs to, maybe you can help Sean with the licensing of it.
Sure, happy to talk about what I know about that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd like to connect with Charles. I think that'd be a very interesting conversation. Cool. Well, why don't we wrap up the meat sack part? So I'm actually going to just do that and do my little video thing here. I think that was very interesting. And then we'll return back to our normal podcast, and then we can just talk a bit more and wrap it up. So give me 11 seconds here as I make myself look all pro and do
Take
this.
all.
Okay, there we're back. So now we're back into it's almost like we did a podcast within a podcast. So perfect. As you know, I don't really get a lot of joy out of editing videos. So if I could just do it real time. And I would like to say my friend J Sauce, no, you're not invisible. So yeah, fascinating. He's a very influential fellow right now, very powerful, like arguably more powerful than politicians because he's being viewed from all over the world. And
And he's not being censored.
yeah, and he really kind of puts he's just all out there. Like there's really, it's a pretty interesting place to be in a new way of being, really,
Mhm.
like some might argue that he's pushing some sort of propaganda, but I don't see it that way. He's just curious and following his nose. And I think that's kind of cool. So
If any of the listeners are interested, there is a website called MOPTU, MOPTU.com, and it is a social media site for articles. You can post any article you want. It's free, and there is no censorship. So people all over the world are posting articles that they find, and they are up there. So it's another avenue to have uncensored news.
cool. And what was that URL again? I'm actually gonna write that down. It wasn't my little Trello in front of me. One more time.
MOPTU.com.
Not too.
MOP2.com.
Okay.
Actually, my son Charles is the developer and programmer.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, more to talk about then. Um, how are you doing for energy? Do you want to keep going? I don't have any immediate questions, but if there's anything you want to talk about, otherwise,
Not necessarily.
okay.
There's I'm just doing my classes and doing my work. And I will say that I have done two videos of readings that I will post on YouTube. And I have made an offer in my class for anyone who wanted me to do a reading, and we'll post it on YouTube. And I think I've had 7 or 8 people offer.
Mhm.
So I will be doing some readings and putting them on YouTube. And I probably will use the charts that have the astrology
Mhm. Well, you can
because
talk.
it's so much more powerful.
Mhm. You can toss my name in the list. I know you've basically been giving me readings all along, but I've always been like at various states of I'd love like a clean one with the new
Okay.
because every time I hear it, it's like poetry, and it's the poetry's getting cleaner, or it's resonating more. So yeah, I'd love that.
Well,
Um,
maybe, Sean, when you visit, we'll do an in-person one.
okay,
That's a whole different experience.
yeah, okay, well, we'll book that for sure. Um, yeah, well, why don't we wrap it there? And yeah, that was cool. Okay,
Okay.
um, I hope you have a great weekend and stick around for
Do.
a minute, but I will close this one off with that other video.